So there's this really cool teaching in Buddhism, and I'm going to try to talk about it here. So it really equates using a Buddhist teaching, or really any spiritual teaching for that matter, and it uses this metaphor of a finger pointing to the moon. You may have heard it. And the teaching is, don't mistake the finger for the moon. So metaphorically, the finger is like the teaching, the spiritual teaching, and the moon is like the truth. And so a teaching's role is really, to point you to the truth. It's and you can only really have a true truth in yourself if it awakens in you. So the teaching really is to point to something, to awaken it in you. Of course, the mistake in the teaching is we mistake the teaching, for the truth. And then we start thinking that the teaching is the truth, and this creates a number of problems. Two problems I'm going to talk about. The first problem is kind of obvious. It's probably what the teaching was really intended to clarify, is that when we think the teaching is the truth, we're not utilizing the teaching correctly, first of all. And what happens is the teaching becomes kind of dogmatic. It becomes, spirituality becomes a religion, right? Whether it's Jesus or Buddha or, Kuan Yin, whoever the teacher is, and even contemporary teachers, Eckhart Tolle or, Pema Chodron or, whoever your teacher is, when we start thinking that their words are the truth, it becomes rigid. It becomes a little more intellectual too, because we're losing the whole idea is that the teaching is intended to awaken that truth in us. So that's the first thing, is we start thinking, and it becomes kind of static. Okay, it's no longer this fluid, awakening of truth. I've had the same teaching awaken different truths, or maybe even different levels of a truth. If I keep the teaching, the way it was intended as something to awaken truth in me, then that can continue to teach me and it can deepen. Whereas if I kind of concretize it and say, this is the truth, and I put it into my intellect, and it's either like, this is the truth, and if it's not that, then it loses its vitality. It loses its life and its ability to awaken new things in me. And really, there's a second problem, in my opinion, that is maybe less spoken about, and that is that when we treat the teaching like the truth, it also externalizes the truth. Okay, the truth becomes the Buddha's, or the truth becomes Jesus's, or it becomes, Pema Chodron's, or it becomes their truth, And the reality is that when a teaching resonates with you, okay, it resonates because something has awakened in you, So, and when that happens, the teaching, the truth is no longer the Buddha's or Eckhart Tolle's or whoever. It becomes your truth. Like, now, the Buddha may have pointed to the moon, and it may have awakened it, but at that moment, it is you that's awakening, and the truth becomes yours. And it's really important to understand that, because all of this happens inside of us. If the awakening isn't happening in you, the teaching's not going to be meaningful to you. It's going to be boring. It's going to be like, so what? So it's really important to understand that. And so that's what I would have you consider, is to realize that the awakening is yours. Even if a really cool teaching awakened it in you, it's yours. And then you can use it, and it can evolve, and it can deepen. So anyway, that is my video for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have an awesome week, and that you allow truths to awaken in you and realize that it was you that awakened them. So I will see you in a week.